Greetings and welcome to Legacies of Wavryn, Lore of the Endelment. This will be Chapter 7 of this reading. For about a minute, Wolf and Rufus just stared at one another in silence. The officers stood 15 feet from Wolf and Rufus and had some of their cars parked around them, as if to enclose an arena. All the officers were betting on who would win with some of the locals. I thought that was funny. As the bets were being played, Wolf started cracking her knuckles, while Rufus cracked its neck. Jewel got frustrated from waiting for the fight to begin and asked, "What's taking so long? Why are they just standing there?" "It's tradition," Fox said. "Everyone on our homeworld does this before a battle. It signifies only those that face each other will be the ones in the fight. However, there are those small few that are just jackasses and like to sucker punch everyone they meet. Like JJ. "You're stupid, Fox," I thought, too lazy to actually speak. "It's just fun. And you forgot Yojin." "Well, it's getting old and boring," Joel barked. "Just watch. Plus, it creates suspense, which is great for a big show." Right as the last bet was placed, Wolf quickly squinted her eyes and jolted towards Rufus. She kicked the right side of his head hard with her left foot, sending him through a patrol car and into the beach about 3 feet deep into the sand. With that kick, Wolf spun around and placed her feet down as she completed the spin, then jolted towards Rufus again while pulling back her right fist for a punch. As Wolf got close, Rufus jumped out and swung an uppercut at her with his left fist. He struck her in the chin and sent her about 20 feet into the air. However, Wolf quickly regained her focus and balance while stopping in midair. Wolf lowered herself back onto the ground while Rufus stood casually watching her. Just as she placed her feet down, Rufus said, "Impressive. Very impressive. In even my greatest of researches, I've never seen an Alekins that can come close to fighting at the level of any normal Kexan. You may just be able to match yourself against your own master." He then slightly tilted his head to the right and asked, "Have you ever considered—" "Shut it!" she barked, jolting towards him with her right fist pulled back for another strike. Wolf lunged at Rufus as she swung at him with a great amount of force, but he ducked just by simply kneeling down. However, she predicted this and passed over his right shoulder, then quickly turned around and kicked the back of his head with her left foot. The strength of Wolf's kick sent Rufus jolting into the right side of a patrol car engine, striking it head first. Shortly after, Wolf moved to face where she had kicked her opponent and started walking back into the street. She stood at the edge of the roadway next to the sidewalk, at the opposite end from where Rufus was. She crossed her arms over her chest and waited for him to pull his head out of the engine of the patrol car, with him struggling slightly. "Like every other Alekins," Wolf said, "as you may already know, I'm only half as good as my master. Not only that, but I would never think of betraying my lord just because I'm above average for an Alekins. Don't forget, I am a servant for the most powerful dynasty in our kingdom, so there's no surprise that I'm near equal to an average Kexan." Rufus finally pulled his head out of the vehicle, ripping out the entire engine. Oddly enough, he started laughing as he turned around to face Wolf, then said, "That's good to know." The engine stuck on his head began to fuse into him, while he continued, "Now I don't have to hold back." Once it fused into him, he said, "By the way, I forgot to mention a rather small detail about my new armor. It can absorb any and all metal material that comes in contact with me. Increases all of my attributes by 20% of the mass of the object that it absorbed." Rufus grabbed the car that he slammed into with his right hand and clenched hard enough to crush the frame. He laughed as he stared at Wolf, with the entire car being absorbed into his body. At the same time, small bits and pieces of it were being withdrawn from his opposite hand. Within a few seconds, the entire patrol car was absorbed, and all the pieces that weren't metal were placed into a small pile, nearly crumbled to dust. When that was done, he said, "Well now, care for round 2? Wolf gave a smirk as she lowered her arms, then said, "Bring it, jerk." She quickly pulled back her right fist and jolted for Rufus again. She swung at his face, but he quickly blocked the attack just by raising his left fist up, using the backside of it to halt her with ease. However, even with her attack stopped, Wolf quickly motioned to punch Rufus with her left fist. But again, he blocked it with ease using his right fist. She then tried to kick him with her right foot into the left side of his head, yet she was again thwarted by his left fist. Wolf tried using hard hits against Rufus, then moved to more tactical and fast strikes. Yet he just continued to avert each attack she gave him without much effort, not even budging the slightest from where he stood. After a minute, Rufus blocked one last strike with the back of his left fist, then quickly pulled his right back slightly to strike Wolf in the center of her stomach. Stunned, she fell onto her hands and knees as she coughed up a small amount of blood onto the pavement. She tried to stand back up, but he just kicked her in the stomach with his right foot, making her hop up a couple inches off the ground and fall onto her face. Every time Wolf tried to get back up, Rufus would just simply kick her to make her fall and roll over onto her back or stomach. Though this was a horrible thing to see, I knew Wolf wasn't in any real trouble. She was just being a little dramatic. She had been in worse situations than a simple beating. I mean, she did take care of Eyeless and Father at one point, and they beat the shit out of her every time she did one little thing wrong. That made me feel bad for her, but I couldn't do anything about it at the time. So, even though Rufus continued to assault her, Wolf didn't have any real problem with it. She was just holding back and was making it look as if he had actually done something. Got to give the little man some credit at least. When Rufus kicked Wolf into the center of the street, I got bored and said, "Come on, Wolf. Quit lying around and just fight him already." "What the hell's wrong with you?" Jewel yelled as she turned towards me. "Can't you see she's struggling?" "No, she's not," I said, glancing over at the human. "She's just being lazy." "What's with you?" Jewel turned to the fight and started to panic as she said, "Help her." She then leaned over to look at Fox and asked, "Fox, isn't she your best friend? Shouldn't you go help her?" In response to that, Fox acted as if she was thinking by placing her right elbow in her left hand with her chin slightly placed on her right fist, while looking up at the sky. Even she knew Wolf was just messing around. After pretending to ponder, Fox replied, "True." She then looked back over at the fight and lowered her arms. For some reason, the fight had come to a stop with Rufus looking down at Wolf as she said, "But my Wolfie will be perfectly alright, if Z thinks so. So she's not in any real danger." "What? How can you say that?" Fox giggled as she grabbed my right arm with both of hers, while placing her head onto my shoulder to slightly rub against it, and said, "Because I know Z here will save my beloved Wolfie if it really comes down to it." She then squeezed my arm hard enough to cut off blood circulation and continued, "Because if he doesn't, he may just somehow end up missing a few necessary parts later tonight." She raised her head a bit to look up at me with a smile and asked, "Right, Z?" "Whatever," I said, keeping my attention on the fight. Rufus was just about to kick Wolf one more time with his right foot, but ended up kicking air. Wolf had quickly got up to dodge the attack as she changed back into her full animal form. She then dashed over to his left side and grabbed his ankle with her teeth within a split second. Before Rufus could even try to place his right foot down, Wolf pulled his left foot with a jerk towards her and forced him to fall backwards, hitting the pavement hard onto his torso and head. She raised him back up and started spinning him in the air as she stood and braced herself only on her hind legs. On the third spin, Wolf jerked Rufus upwards to quickly slam him back down onto the concrete. The force that she put into her attack created a small earthquake that split the street apart with one large crack, stretching from the sidewalk near the buildings to the beach in between from where she had slammed him. Once he hit the ground, Rufus struggled by trying to kick Wolf with his right foot to get her off, but wasn't quite able to reach her easily. He gave 5 quick kicks before he finally struck the top of her head. However, she didn't even flinch. Instead, she gripped her fangs harder onto his leg, which actually broke through the metal skin he wore and deep into his bones, spilling at least a pint of blood onto the pavement. After that, Wolf lifted Rufus back up and continued to spin him. When the 5th spin came around, she whipped him towards the crash truck and into the cab, while she changed back into her half state. She stood up, with her back to the truck, then she turned around to face it as she raised her right hand to flip off Rufus, nodding her head and biting her lower lip slightly. Not sure why she did that, other than to show off. After a few seconds, Wolf lowered her arm and spat at the ground to her left side, where I noticed it was a piece of the dark armor. She turned back towards the truck and barked, "Fucking kick me, you jackass!" She began to turn to her left, as if motioning away, yet she charged a small, light pink energy blast into her left hand and quickly spun back to throw it at the truck. When the blast hit the truck, it had enough power to just destroy the entire cab and a bit of the trailer. As the smoke cleared, Wolf lowered her left arm and said, "Shithead." "Whoa," Jules said. "That was awesome." All I thought was, well, at least she's starting to get serious now. But she seemed to have forgotten about the fact that he can absorb metal and gain power from it. Oh well, best to learn from your own mistakes. 3 minutes after the blast hit, Rufus still didn't show himself, and Wolf was starting to get impatient, as was I. We both knew he wasn't dead, but at the same time we both knew it wasn't going to take much to end him. Finally, over her weight, Wolf started throwing dark pink and unstable energy blasts at random just to obliterate Rufus. Though it was a waste of energy, it was effective, though some of the blasts didn't actually hit the target. That's what I'd start doing if I was getting impatient in a fight. Helps draw them out into the open. Wolf was about to throw her 15th attack, but heard someone laughing in the distance from where the smoke was coming from. As the smoke cleared, we finally saw Rufus, just standing there as he did a sinister laugh with his head bent over his left shoulder. Something was different. The armor around his leg had repaired, and the armor around his hair reverted to its normal texture, where it was shown as if pitch black. His hair also grew out about an inch longer, and had a slight bit of black electricity sparking around it every now and then. Not only that, but his mouth grew back, and was slightly longer than before, nearly past his cheeks. There was also the fact that he had grown out 9 black foxtails that were each about 5 feet long, with fur that was about 2 feet thick, all flailing around oddly like they were agitated. When we saw Rufus standing, showing his sharp teeth, he said, "Pathetic. At this rate, you'll never beat me. The power of darkness will just keep growing stronger as it continues to flow within every inch of my being. There's nothing that you can do to stop me." He bent himself forward and had one of his 9 tails fling over his left shoulder, which stretched to strike through Wolf's right shoulder. Once the first one pierced through, he sent a second one over his right shoulder at Wolf's left, as he said, "I've grown tired of you." As the second tail struck, he said, "Time to die." Wolf started to panic as she asked herself, "What the hell? What's going on? Why can't I move?" Rufus laughed again and struck her with 3 more of his tails into her torso, then said, "Sorry, I forgot to mention something once I got into this stage of my armor. When I pierce someone with just one of my tails, the fur sends a toxic chemical that not only paralyzes organic material, but also intensifies the pain by twice its normal amount." With that, Rufus struck another tail into the center of Wolf's chest. She then started to scream in pain, while he continued, "Plus, once I've placed all 9 of my tails into my victim, I can kill them in an instant just by ripping my tails away from their body." The pain is so intensified that the spirit can't resist it anymore and is forced to leave the body, bringing its life to wander into darkness regardless of how powerful the victim is or how easily they can regenerate. Hearing that, I thought, interesting. If that's the case, then he may just have the power of darkness after all. I sighed, then continued, guess I'm gonna have to get my hands dirty. I turned and started walking towards Rufus as he struck Wolf with 2 more of his tails, one just above each of her knees. I pulled my arm away from Fox as she looked over at me and asked, "Gonna go help my Wolfie, Z?" "No," I said, grabbing Zane and pulling the hammer back with my thumb. "Just gonna get in on some of the action. I'm getting bored watching from the sidelines." "Okay then," she said with a joyful tone. "Have fun." As I walked towards Rufus, the officers standing around that had placed bets on the fight started complaining to me to not step in. But of course, I didn't give a damn. I wasn't going to listen to them. Bunch of stupid-ass humans. I got halfway towards Rufus just as he struck Wolf with his last tail straight into the center of her neck. He gave a sinister chuckle, then viciously asked, "Any last words?" I quickly snapped my left-hand fingers to enforce Timebreaker as I walked behind the idiot. In doing so, I raised Zane at the back of where his heart was. When I charged for a powerful shot, I snapped my left fingers again and replied, "Just this." I pulled the trigger and the blast charge blew away Rufus's heart, along with the left half of his chest and some of the right half, with his arms and head amazingly still attached. After the shot, and before Rufus could fall over, I calmly ended with, bang. The tails retracted back, while his entire body fell forward. I quickly grabbed Vince and let off 5 fast rounds from both guns into Rufus's body, just as payback for striking Wolf. After that, I put both Zane and Vince back into their holsters and walked over to Wolf. She had fallen to her knees and was still paralyzed a bit. She was leaning to her left side, with her body slowly going into recovery. I knelt down on my right knee in front of her as I gently used my hands to hold her up straight and asked, "What have we learned?" She struggled to get her words out as she said, "Sorry, my lord. It's alright, Wolf," I said, raising my left hand to place it on her head as to gently pet and comfort her. I then said, "I'll wait till you've healed." As I waited for Wolf to heal, Fox and Joel ran over to us as Fox joyfully called out, "Wolfie!" She moved to kneel down at her left side and hugged her tight to comfort her as well, which made Wolf yelp for a second in pain. She held onto her as she rubbed her right face cheek against her left. Then after a few seconds of relief, she stopped to look over at me with a slightly angry expression and yelled, "Take your hands off my Wolfie, you meanie." Joel ran over to kneel behind Wolf to help hold her up, while I became surprised and slightly frightened at what Fox had said to me. At the same time, I quickly pulled my hands away as to not provoke another reaction. Fox can be very mean and destructive at times, especially if her anger involves Wolf being harmed in any way. But at the time, I didn't really know what Fox's problem was exactly, but she didn't have to be such a bitch about it. Guess she couldn't help it in a way. While Fox attended to her beloved, I looked over at Wolf with a smirk and asked, "Did you have fun?" Fox gave a light growl at me, yet Wolf waved her left hand as to calm her down. She then looked up at me with a smile and said, "A little." "Good," I said as I reached to pat her on the head with my right hand again. However, just as I touched Wolf, Fox quickly leaned over and bit the side of my hand, hard enough to pierce my skin and nearly into my bones. I quickly pulled my right hand back and held it with my left, looking over at her with an angry expression, and said, "Ah, bitch!" Fox just stared at me in anger as she bared her fangs and bent her ears back slightly, while also snarling at me. Just as that happened, Wolf shook her head as she laughed at what happened between us. Everything was good until all of Rufus's tails stretched around my body and struck Wolf again. Then they all quickly ripped away from her body. As the tails were ripped out, they retreated back, while Wolf gave her last breath, saying my name. She then fell over into Fox's arms as she pulled her in close to hold her, looking down at her in shock and in fear. I just stared in great surprise and shock, denying the idea that she'd be dead. Trying to hold back her emotions, Fox called out, "Wolfie, are you alright? Please, say something, Wolfie." Holding her friend in her arms, she started to cry as she looked up at me and said, "She can't be dead, can she? That's impossible. The only way that we can die is by complete obliteration. Isn't it? Isn't it?" I was stunned out of my mind at what I saw and thought, impossible. There's no way the power of darkness can actually kill us without total destruction. That's just a myth. Nothing in the tales or legends states that darkness can kill anyone at any given time. It just defies the laws of physics. What kind of power is this darkness? The officers nearby grabbed their pistols and began shooting at Rufus, trying to stop him from killing any more people, as pointless as that was. He just laughed and began striking back at them, either killing them with one hit or painfully crippling them. In the commotion, Jewel looked over at me and asked, "Can't you heal her?" "She's beyond healing," I quietly said. "I can't sense her life energy. She's really gone. That power, it's beyond anything I've ever imagined. It really is the power of shadow, the power of darkness." An explosion came from where Rufus was, and all of the officers that were around trying to stop him were thrown back, killing them instantly. Right after the explosion, Rufus shouted, "Back off! None of you little shits have what it takes to stop me. My power is unstoppable, unobtainable, and unbeatable. I am the very definition of invincible." Fox glanced over at me and screamed, "Ray!" However, it was too late. Before I could react, Rufus struck me with all 9 of his tails through my torso. I couldn't believe it. It can't end this way. It just couldn't. This concludes the reading of Chapter 7. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, there will be a link to my physical works in the description below. And with that being said, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again next week, reading Chapter 8.